What's good, y'all? What's good? What's happening? Hello, everybody. I know you're not used to seeing us here like this on the Cowboy Up podcast, but we've got some Paleo picks headed your way right here at RetroFit Sports, and we're going to talk a little college baseball, baby. Yeah, I know it's not what we typically do around here, but tomorrow is opening day, and what better way to start with opening day than to go through what we went through last season? And let's see if we can tie it to this season. Let's see if we can find you guys some winners and get you guys some money. But over here to my left, my right, whatever you want to call it, is my man Sweets. Cuzzo. What's good, baby? How you living?
Man, I just ate like the dankest dinner. I'm out here in Kansas City, living the legal life, and let's do this, man. Let's do this.
Hold on. You
I'm
had
not
dinner. If I know you, and I know you pretty damn well, I'm guessing you had a little barbecue.
a little would be like an understatement.
All right, man. You
Did,
got you.
did a
Before we even get into
porterhouse.
it,
It
I need
was
to know, like, what's up? What we having? Some Kansas City barbecue. What was the plate?
we did a porterhouse, and then we did a grass finished, grass fed ribeye. Had some salmon, like made this Asian Trinity sweat onion mushroom thing, sweet potatoes, smoked some beets. Like we were living the paleo life right here. Let me tell you, the
I'm telling you right
caveman
now
didn't have anything on this. No,
that I know your ass when it comes to that barbecue. So but you
it's
always
gonna
got
be
something
illegal
random
to
in
eat
there.
like
Like
this.
if y'all listen to that, he gave you all the barbecue, right? But we're gonna throw in some beats just out of nowhere with that shit. I know y'all heard that shit.
Good
I
for
know
the
I'm not the
blood.
only one.
It's good for the
That
blood.
I know it's good for the blood, but random as shit at my barbecue joint. Like I was like, maybe some beans, maybe he has some greens, like who knows? But fucking beets. That's what we own right now, is some beets. But let's get into this shit, man, because
A little bit
I'm
better.
really excited for this season. Obviously, my Longhorns got themselves a brand new coach, which I'm excited about that. Yanked them away from little brother, so that's always nice for me. But we're going to get in depth with this because we're going to be talking from the itty bitty schools to the schools all the way up at the very top in the Power Five. But when it boils down to it, if I remember correctly, from 2024, after looking through the lines, and obviously hearsay is something, right? But at the end of the day, you take the information that's given to you. You found a pattern. You found something in those lines from 2024 that you're thinking you're going to be able to tie to this season. And I just want you to talk about that, man. What did you see in those lines?
So there was definitely a pattern that kind of emerged when you look through, when you were looking at the total, especially um, in these bigger ballparks, and when you had matchups that were more even. When you had two real teams playing each other on a neutral site, it was going to go under. But when you had a David versus Goliath situation, Goliath just beat the tar out of David every time, and those were the games that tended to go over. So when you're looking at it today, I mean, when we're looking at these historical paleo picks, if you will, you're going to see this pattern emerge, and again, it's going to the opening day of college baseball. The way it's set up is a lot of these teams are not playing at home; they're playing on the road. They're cold weather teams. They don't have a choice but to go on the road and play. It's not possible for them to play where they're at. And some have chosen much easier paths than others. I mean, if you look at a team like Kansas, they're playing at Texas A&M Corpus Christi. It's really cold. It's 20 degrees, right? I'm in Kansas City, Missouri right now. It's 20 degrees or below, right? They haven't gotten out and played outside, a team like Kansas. Whereas in Texas, I mean, what's the weather right now in Austin? Like 50, 60 degrees? Like
I mean, it's cold for us. It's cold for us, you know what I'm saying? But it's humid out here too, man. That air sticks to you out here. It's cold, damn it.
The difference is these teams in the South and Texas are outside playing. A team like Kansas is inside, and I think that's going to make a big difference when you're looking at totals. Also, keep in mind these players are coming in with around 40 preseason at bats. So in these situations where the pitching is on par with the hitting, you have to trend to the under. And again, but when it's like set up to be a blowout, in a David versus Goliath situation, it's going to be blowout. It's also, it's not a great day for upsets. I wouldn't come out chasing upsets today. That's not something I would tell you, hey, let's go play all these money line dogs. I don't think this is a scenario for that. It's more of a scenario for playing run lines and trying to build your bankroll. I would not come out chasing dogs today. It's if you look at the historical data from last season, there was only really one big money line dog hit, and we'll get into that.
Well, let's run through a couple of these lines because there's a lot of different lines to go to. And mind you, remember, everybody that's listening, this is from last season. We're trying to tie what happened last year to what's going to happen this year, and there's a lot of commonality between a lot of these matchups. But we open it up with Indiana at -1.5 at Duke. Over under was at 11.5. And money lines were at -175 and +135. Do you remember that? Do you have the results on that one?
Let me look it up here. But I know that it went under and that Duke covered. I don't know the exact score. Give me 1 second. But I know that that's how it went down.
My bad. We got the technical difficulties. I thought you had your results there.
Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. I will bring it up here in 1 second. It's 2024 college baseball. And big shout out to Warren Nolan, by the way, a website that I use a lot, especially for this old school data here. And we're going to go into the Big Ten.
Or we can just run through. Tell me this: which ones from the ones that you remember that stood out? Like, who was the biggest dog that won that week? Because there wasn't a lot.
The biggest dog was St. John's beating Florida, which was like 5-1. That was really the only major dog that hit that day. And a lot of it just did not. Okay, so Duke won that game 6-3, right? So you had two real teams.
Yeah.
You had two real teams playing at the Battle of Each, which is Conway, South Carolina, which is tomorrow's one of the first or second. I think it's the second game. Kansas State is playing Washington in this scenario. In a very similar spot to this, and we're talking about a Washington team that's a total rebuild against a Kansas State team that's not a total rebuild, but lost a lot of guys, where I don't think they're going to have quite the same amount of offense. So if we look at that, Kansas State's run total here, this game is 14.5 runs. I don't think that it's going to get close to that at all. I think that's even higher than I thought it would be. I prognosticated this total being 12.5. Kansas State is either going to start Tyrul or they're going to start this other guy whose name I'm totally blanking on at the moment. I totally forgot his name, but I think it's probably going to be Tyrul. But Washington coming in had a 741 OPS, which is really one of the worst in D1. Maybe this was the worst out of the Power 5. This is a total rebuild. They got a coach later on in the season. A lot of their best players left in the transfer portal, and they were late to replace them. They're really not working with
this year with Kansas State and Washington.
Washington is picked pretty in depending who you ask, they could be anywhere from 9 to 14. If you're being prognosticated at 14, that's putting you below Northwestern level talent. You really got to question Washington in the spot with a new coach and like so many new players coming in, only 40 preseason at bats against a Kansas State team that I think feels like they're being disrespected because they're an unknown. The way they finished last year, they're picked like somewhere in the middle of the pack, 8-9 in the Big 12. I think this is a team that has lots to prove. Big line movement though, right out of the gate. Kansas State was -160. Anywhere from -200 to 210. You got a 1.5 run line here, and you have 14.5. Give me Kansas State and the under here, and I love the under as a play here. Absolutely love it. I mean, if you're looking at just last year's scenario, Kansas State played in a similar spot last year. They played in an invitational against Cal. They were the favorite there with honestly a better team in Cal than Washington. Cal was like team 65 and really was only left out because the Pac-12 was a disintegrating conference. They didn't have anybody in the room fighting for them. It was criminal that Cal was left out of the NCAA tournament last year. And Kansas State lost to them 6-3, which is a much better team than Washington.
You just go bust out the random ass bug and not say shit to me. Like what was that even that you just pulled out of there? What was that?
I had a frog in my throat, and
yeah.
It's
all right. I gotta reel you back in here. I gotta reel you back in here because we're supposed to be on 2024. You already giving away the picks and shit. Like
okay,
just in case okay. y'all didn't know, he getting ahead of himself right now. We just went straight to the picks. So you got your first one, Kansas State -1.5. Do you like the run line on that one to take a -1.5? Or I know you love the total. I know the total is your favorite on that one.
The total is absolutely the play. Let me tell you, the value
of going under. You're pretty certain of it going under.
Oh my gosh, this is even higher than I thought it would be. I really don't even see Washington getting a maximum of 3 runs in this situation. I just don't think they have the bats. They have too many newcomers, and a team like in Washington's situation, I think could be an error-prone deal here.
So when we reel it back to 24, what was the trend? Like the trend, I guess you kind of hinted at it with the analogy with Indiana and Duke compared to Washington and Kansas State for this season. But when we go back to last year, it was basically you have 2 real contenders. We're looking under, correct? Or are we looking over?
When you have 2 real teams that are playing each other, I mean, when we're not talking about a David versus Goliath scenario, like what would be a good David? I mean, basically anyone an SEC team is playing at home, whoever like Tennessee is opening up with, or like Florida State is opening up with James Madison. Florida State is a massive favorite. They're not going to.
I feel like one of the biggest favorites last year. I think one of the biggest favorites last year was it Georgia? No. LSU and VMI. LSU was a 6.5 point run favorite last year opening day. The line was 13.5. They were -1950 money line to win against VMI +6.5 at -105 plus 950 money line. And of course that over under was at 13.5. Do you remember where that one, can you show us where that one popped out?
That one finished at, let's see.
I know they were one of the biggest money line favorites for sure was LSU at -1950. It's ridiculous.
They won the game 11-8.
11-8. They didn't even cover.
What was the total?
13.5.
Yeah, I mean, it crushed the total. So it was a David versus Goliath scenario. I mean, LSU should not have lost. They didn't lose. I mean, they were what was it? -1900?
Yeah, -1950.
But they're a 6.5 run favorite, right?
Yeah.
So they opened with Elon, I believe, this year. I'm not exactly sure, but like I know that they're very big. So like I was saying, this is a David versus Goliath scenario, and it went over. And it didn't just sneak over. I mean, it went like significantly over. It went like 6 runs over. So they beat the tar out of them. They won like they're supposed to, but the other team was very spirited because they're never going to get to play a blue blood like this really that often.
Another big favorite was right after them. It's North Carolina and Wagner. Wagner at North Carolina, 5.5 runs. Line was 12.5 for the over/under. North Carolina was -810 favorite. Wagner was +500.
Carolina won 10-3.
Just snuck over.
So
snuck over.
Snuck over. They got 11 hits. Here's the thing about a team like Wagner disintegrated on themselves. They committed 3 errors. It's going to be hard up to win any game when you commit 3 errors, but they got 8 hits, which is kind of impressive to get 8 hits, but 3 runs, but they did get over. Honestly, that one could have even scored more runs, but it barely got over. It was a David versus Goliath scenario. I mean, Wagner's in an impossible scenario to win, but swings a bat, competes. But really, 3 errors, you can't win.
Another decent favorite got Arkansas. James Madison at Arkansas, minus 3.5 runs to Arkansas, minus 540 on the minus 540 on the money line. Over under was at 11.5. 11.5 from these guys. And maybe not David Goliath, but ultimately, I mean, 5-1 on your money.
Arkansas won 6-4.
6-4.
But Madison, I believe, made the NCAA tournament,
so
they were a real team.
Yeah, and we found that out.
I believe they did make the NCAA tournament. They were a 17-13 Sun Belt team. They were 36-25 overall. I believe they just snuck into the NCAA tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So they were a real team, right? Not necessarily a David versus Goliath scenario either. Like a real team, and it went under.
And you know what? This one might be better. You got East Carolina and Rider. I don't remember Rider doing much last year.
Rider should actually be a better team this year.
This year, you think?
Year. Yeah, there would be a better team this year.
They were minus 660 to East Carolina. East Carolina was minus 660. Rider was plus 420 money line. You had a 4.5 run spread, 11.5.
East Carolina won 16-2.
16-2. So
15 hits.
That one's skied.
That's unreal. Over. That's unbelievable. 15 hits, 16 runs. That's unbelievable.
I mean, 4. What is that? 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5. What was that? At least 5 examples, I think, just from last season. And we still got one more. And this one's a big one.
Ryder was a 28-23 team overall. They had a gaudy conference record of 18-6. I think that's more indicative that the conference level of competition in their conference really just wasn't that good. East Carolina is definitely a blue blood. That's definitely a David versus Goliath scenario. You're not going to go into Greenville as like a little mid-major like that and not get rattled. That's a big-time environment. That's absolutely a David versus Goliath scenario, in my opinion, and it crushed the total. What was the total?
The total on that one, I got to go back to it. It was 11.5.
11.5, 18. I mean... And this is only with Ryder getting 2 runs on 2 hits. I mean, East Carolina went over by themselves.
This is a decent run line, but the money line was deceptively close considering the other ones that we've looked at. But you got Coastal Carolina, George Mason at Coastal Carolina. The run line was minus 4.5 to Coastal, minus 360. And then plus 260 for George Mason. Run line over under was 14.5.
What league is this? Hold on a second.
Coastal and George Mason.
Mason is an Atlantic 10 team. Coastal is a Sun Belt team. Yeah, they're a Sun Belt team. That's what I'm showing. Hold on. No, 1 second. Coastal Mason. Coastal won that game 26-0.
Oh my God. 26-0. That's funny too, because that was probably the closest money line out of all of them.
But Mason was a 21-32 team, 7-17, and a really not very good Atlantic 10. I mean, were a really terrible team. They got smoked. But in a situation like that, it's maybe kind of hard to know the talent level of Mason and how good they are. But I mean, historically speaking, Coastal Carolina usually has a pretty good team. So here we are again in one of these David versus Goliath scenarios, although you might not really know that Mason is like that small of a David.
Especially
so that went over.
Especially considering the line that they gave you. Because, I mean, that was the closest money line out of the 4.5 point spreads.
Yeah, consistently the Davids have been getting killed here, and they've been gone over. And the one that just didn't was just barely under.
So outside of the David and Goliath being under, or over, you're still pretty confident in the fact that these teams that aren't getting a shot at these true blue buds, looking at a David and Goliath scenario, we're going to get those added at bats, and they're going to be shooting over those run lines. Who's going under?
From the games, like right out of the gate, I mean, Kansas State 14.5. What a gift. Got to go under that.
Was there anything that showed you from last year that trended under in the matchups? Or was it just those teams that we're looking at, like these 1.5 point spreads, 2.5 point spreads? Are those the ones that we're considering the unders on in most scenarios, or is it more about the David and Goliath and hitting that over?
The David and Goliath scenarios is more so that the Goliath is getting that team on their home tour, on their true home field, whereas these teams that are from the northern or colder regions that are playing in like Globe Life, or playing in Puerto Rico, playing in Arizona, playing in all these road scenarios in larger parks to open the season. These are just classic under scenarios. I would look at an under in every game in Globe Life, unless there was a matchup or scenario that you were really feeling. Like I said, overs are reserved for David and Goliath scenarios where the starter of the David is going to get shelled. The relievers are going to shell. Everyone that shows up out of this team is going to get drilled, right? Those are the type of teams that you have to play over, And on a DraftKings board, there's not as much of those games as opposed to other ones. The DraftKings board is smaller than the other ones. That's for sure. They have more of these David Goliaths on like Rivers and other ones. Everyone is kind of at their own pace with the college baseball lines. It just depends on what book you have and what you're going to get.
So let's move into this season. Based on a few of the things that we know from last year, what is sticking out to you this year? Obviously, we've talked about Washington and the fact that these guys, for whatever reason, are playing in South Carolina. Am I not mistaken? Aren't they playing
in Conway, South Carolina? Correct.
Conway, South Carolina at 10 a.m. Good luck, Washington.
Yeah, let's keep that in mind. So
10 a.m. Eastern time puts it at 7 a.m. Pacific. Good luck with that, Washington.
That is a 10 a.m. start time. I'm not sure if this is Central or Eastern. Either way, it's not a time that they normally play baseball in Washington.
So
that's for sure.
I mean, either way, you're looking at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. for those kids. I forget if
everything just seems so stacked against Washington in this scenario, which explains why something would go from minus 160 to minus 200. You lost a ton of your best players. I mean, you already had a very poor hitting team. You lost the best hitters that you had in the portal. You had a late start with your coach. He wasn't able to have access to I don't want to say leftover players, but I mean, kind of leftover players. They weren't
everything
the
that you're
one.
saying, though. Is this a David and Goliath scenario? Because I think we feel pretty good about Kansas State going into the season, even with all the changes that they've made.
It's not.
Is it David and Goliath?
It's not, because Kansas State lost their best players, and they lost players that I don't think that a team like Kansas State can just replace a first-round draft pick infielder in Kalen Culpepper, who was the guy, man. He won that game in Arkansas. Like, it was a classic pitching against hitting scenario where they'll tell you in baseball that the pitching should have won, but in that moment the hitter won, and it advanced Kansas State to a place that they had only been to one time before. I'm just really not sure you can replace the amount of upperclassmen draft talent. These were all guys that have moved on to the next level, are still playing baseball. I just don't know as a Kansas State. And Pete Hughes is going to tell you, we've got guys in house. Okay, but we haven't seen them. Like, it's hard for me to vouch for guys that I really haven't seen out there. I think it's really hard to replace like your best everything when you're at Kansas State, when you're not a traditional blue blood. I think this is going to be a closer game than the 14.5. I really see this as a Kansas State winning this game 4-1, 4-2, 5-2, something like that. I can't see Washington getting more than 3 runs. I just don't. Because Kansas State starters, it should be Ty Rule, and if it's not, it's the other guy, Blake Dean. There we go. That's his name. It came to me. Blake Dean is good enough to only give up 3 runs in 5 innings, and then bring it over to a bullpen where they should have some solid arms. They had some guys come in like later in the season that should step up for Kansas State. But the bats for Kansas State, I don't think are going to be super torrid. I don't think Kansas State's going to get 8 runs. Right? You're not going to get 7 runs. 14.5 runs would mean that one team would have to get over 7 runs. I don't think that's happening in this game. I think they're just way off.
Let's oh shoot. Nope. Did I lose you? Oh no. Well, give me just a second. We're going to get into these lines for the other games. Because we got some pretty good matchups in terms of the bigger favorites. A lot of these matchups are the same actually as well, which is kind of crazy from year to year that they keep it consistent in that way. Let me see. All right. Well, I'm going to give him a minute, and I'm just going to banter to you guys for a little while. The wall's finally coming together. For those of you who are in here who see me on them Tuesday nights with my boys on the Cowboy Up podcast. He should be back in here in just a second. I'm sure we just got them technical difficulties, but I don't want to get too far off on a tangent with that, but season did come to an end. Obviously, Eagles and all that nonsense. It was crazy how they won that game, and I know we're going to talk about it next week, and I know we're going to get into everything else on the show in terms of the draft and free agency and what we're going to be looking at, and obviously grading us out for the year. But that game was absolutely insane, and it was just crazy to see Pat Mahomes look so bad because we ain't never seen him look like that. That was a whole nother demon in that whole game. That whole thing killed me with that. I've never seen him look that bad. So it's going to be interesting to see how they come back because they got some things they got to take care of themselves. But man, can they handle the AFC? That's so nuts how crazy that they control that entire conference. That is crazy to me because when I look at it, I'm like, I feel like Buffalo would have gave us a better game. I feel like the Ravens would have gave us a better game. It's just crazy that's what we ended up with. But let me get back into this baseball because he's back.
There we go.
This motherfucker. I straight up switched it up. I was like, I need you for the nonsense. And I just started talking about football because, why the fuck not?
Why not? Cowboy up. There you go.
That's how that
people
works.
Even watching? I don't even know.
We'll see. We'll see what happens as it comes in. But let's get on to these. There's some other matchups that we have. What's crazy to me is a lot of these matchups are the same from last year. Are they not? Like, am I nuts? Like a lot of these matchups.
A lot of the same teams are playing, but not necessarily each other.
Because like even as we open up, it's like Ohio, Boston College. Oh no, never mind. There was something else. Indiana, Duke. I was like, didn't we just start with Indiana, Duke? But
they're both playing tomorrow. I know that Duke is playing Cincinnati, and Indiana is.
Okay, then no.
Whoever they're playing, they're like a pretty big favorite. Indiana is playing UNLV minus 238. They opened as a much smaller favorite than that.
So who are the biggest? Who are the David and Goliath matchups that we need to be looking out for opening day for 2025 that are going to feed us that over that we're needing?
From the DraftKings board, or just in general?
I mean, yeah, and DraftKings. We've been going off of DraftKings this whole time, so we might as well just stick
DraftKings,
with
I'm going to
it.
be honest with you, is like an underboard. It's not like a really an overboard in my opinion. Kansas State, Washington under, Oklahoma State, Clemson, 10.5 runs. Honestly, that's like seems like really just like right on the total. These are supposed to be teams that are, Oklahoma State's supposed to have all these home run guys, like these giant 6'5" home run guys.
You have the run lines, don't you?
Yeah, we
'Cause
do.
I know they haven't. I know they haven't come out with the spreads yet, but we have the
Here's the
over
thing.
unders.
Oklahoma State, when I opened up like yesterday, the game was Oklahoma State minus 120 and Clemson was minus 110. The public has an opinion, and now it's Clemson minus 135 on DraftKings and Oklahoma State plus 105. So the public clearly says that Clemson is the better team, or whoever betters, sharps, if you will. I can tell you what percentage of the bet is where. 18% of the money line, according to DraftKings, is on Oklahoma State, and only 34% of the spread. And
what is the money line?
The money line is plus 105.
Plus 105 OK State?
On Oklahoma State. And the total, 70% of the action's on the over at 10.5, which I get. That's a really super public over right there. That seems like a low total in a game where you're supposed to have these very talented players. Cam Camarella and the Oklahoma State guys are just like supposed to be all these like home run studs. I get why the 70% of the action would be on the total there.
And this is at Clemson.
It says, this is at a neutral site.
It's a neutral site.
It's a neutral site. I can tell you where it is in a second. But I know it's a neutral site. It's not. It's in Globe Life.
Globe Life.
It's in Arlington.
Very nice.
Which is an under park. So that would explain to you why the total is 10.5 runs. You got two real teams playing each other in a major league ballpark that's very large. But honestly, 10.5 is not a total that I really love either way. I mean, it would tell you historically to play the under. I'm not really in love with that. That's just a game I would duck, I think, on the total wise.
Do you have any?
Historically, it would be to play the under in this scenario on Oklahoma State and Clemson, but I would pass. Shriners College Showdown, yeah, Globe Life.
What do you have any David and Goliath matchups at all for what we're looking at? Like, who's the biggest favorite for the day?
Let me see here. I'm gonna have to open up the Rivers board for those type of lines. Let's see. Rivers board. All right. Let's see if Rivers has like totals too. Give me 1 second. Oh yeah, we got the full. So
they've lined all the games now.
Most of them. They don't have like totals for like all of them, but they have a total for this game, which is also 10.5, and they have the same. They have a little extra on Oklahoma State, but okay. So Arkansas, huge favorite here. David versus Goliath scenario. I would say they're minus 835. It doesn't have a run line or a total. That would probably qualify as a David versus Goliath scenario.
Who are they playing?
Washington State.
Washington State.
Washington State, of course, is a WCC team now, I believe. because the Pac-12 doesn't exist, and I don't really think they did very much last season. They definitely didn't make the NCAA tournament. Arkansas is supposed to be an absolutely loaded team. This is probably a David versus Goliath scenario where I could see every one of Washington State's pitchers getting lit up. What else is it, David? Georgia and Quinnipiac. Georgia's minus 1430. We don't have a total or run line there. You know what, though? Quinnipiac does have some position players that are pretty good. And they're a very prestigious private school in Connecticut. And I think their talent is probably a little better than what this what this line is saying. But it's definitely a David versus Goliath scenario, and I think Quinnipiac can actually put up some runs. I would say Georgia over.
Georgia over?
Yeah.
Is the total there yet or no?
I don't have one right now.
That's what you gotta love about baseball, man. These dudes don't line these things until the literal witching hour. These games start tomorrow.
In like 12 hours.
College baseball is such an anomaly that they haven't even lined these things yet. The Super Bowl was lined 2 months ago. This thing.
That's wild.
Crazy. That's crazy.
To some degree, they're afraid of people's knowledge bases being better than theirs because of baseball is like a very old timer, like hard, and it's college baseball. The variance is like through the roof. You're going to see in these early seasons games how hard it is to win 3 games in a row. Like some of these garbage teams are going to win a game or two, but it's not going to happen that frequently. But it's going to happen, and and that especially in the midweeks and stuff. So it's a very high variance sport, and you throw in the aluminum bat, and it's one of those things. Mississippi State minus 2,000 against Manhattan. I think that's a huge David Goliath. That's got to be just over city right there. Kentucky Lipscomb, I don't think is a David versus Goliath. I think that's probably going to be an under game. I think Lipscomb is probably better than people think.
Which one?
Kentucky and Lipscomb.
You think Lipscomb's going to be better?
I think Lipscomb is going to be one of these, they're one of these teams in Tennessee. They're a private school in Tennessee. I think their talent is probably better than the numbers indicating, minus 1,000.
Wow, minus 1,000. David and Goliath, this is going to be the under on the David and Goliath scenario, at least according to the line, minus 1,000?
I don't think it's David and Goliath like it says, though, because Kentucky's bringing in a lot of new people. They have to acclimate, and I think Lipscomb is going to give up more resistance. I think that's an under game. I don't think that's a David and Goliath game. Oregon State and Xavier, I don't think that Xavier is as bad as the line makers saying they are. I don't think this is a David versus Goliath scenario. I think 14.5 I think is too many runs. Xavier to me was like a borderline NCAA team. They finished with an RPI of 44. If they had finished better, I think they could have been in the conversation for an at-large, but they weren't really in the conversation. But they really had metrics to be in the conversation. Oregon State's a team without a conference. They're the only team playing, I think, an independent schedule. I'm not really sure that it's as hard. I mean, minus 435 here. I mean, they're really saying that Xavier can't win, which, okay, maybe Xavier can't win, but 14.5 runs seems too many for a Xavier team that really didn't hit that well in scenarios like this, playing the bigger teams.
Okay.
I wonder if that's 14.5 seems like a little too many for me in this scenario. I mean, Oregon State's going to win what? 10-3 at best, I think. Are they going to get 10 runs? 9-5 is going to go under. They don't have a run line, but just based on that, I would think it's 3.5 to 4.5 runs. So like 9-5 is like kind of like the scenario you would look at.
Any other? So we've got K-State under 14.5. We got Arkansas over, Georgia over, Mississippi State over, Kentucky under, Oregon State under. Anything else?
Wake Forest is a huge favorite against Long Island. This Long Island team might be better than people think. They were pretty feisty last year. Wake Forest, I think, has been maybe the most overrated team 2 years in a row. I mean, I hate to say that, but it seems like that to me. I mean, especially last season. They were the preseason favorite to win it all, and they did very little to back that up. In the season before, they were supposed to be unbeatable, and they definitely didn't rise to the occasion when they needed to.
We're leaning under on this or over?
I'm leaning under. Wake Forest is traditionally pitching. I wonder how many runs they're going to score in this situation against Long Island, and I think Long Island can be pretty feisty. You know what? You think you're probably going to get a total of. You know what it is? I think actually Wake Forest Long Island is a David versus Goliath situation that will go over, but I think Long Island is going to actually push them.
So
right?
Wake Forest. So Wake Forest, we're thinking over.
Goliath. Yeah, I think Wake Forest will probably go over.
It's going to be one of those games where Lipscomb just kind of wakes up,
or Long Island,
just wakes up and just decides they're going to play some ball.
Long Island is just good enough to get 6 runs. That's the thing. Like, I think that I could see them getting 6 runs.
Do we have a total on that game or no?
We don't have a total.
All right.
Irvine, Nebraska is 11.5. I think that's an under game. Here's the thing: like, I've yet to see any Irvine starter information. I've yet to see anybody release any on any of these blogs. I watch a lot of them.
I've got lines. I've got lines for everything.
Oh, we got it, but I don't know who's going to start this game for Irvine. Like, the player information for Irvine is kind of scant right now. The other side of the ball, like, who's going to start and who's going to play for Nebraska. That's not a question. It's the other side. I'm not really sure. But 11.5. Nebraska last year was like, didn't really have the hitting, and they were the bigger dog here. The public has made them into like a pseudo favorite. They were like plus 115. They were like plus 100 earlier. They're minus 103. It says on Rivers, and Irvine is minus. The book says Irvine's better. They're like one of these California teams.
UC Irvine?
Yeah.
Playing Nebraska?
And it's in a neutral. What are they playing?
UC Irvine's the favorite. minus 1.5. Minus 1.5. Over under at 11.5. Minus 130 money line over Nebraska.
They've been the better baseball program for probably the last 10 years. Easily better than Nebraska.
But do you think they'd be competitive enough to go over?
No, I don't think that Nebraska is really an over team. I think these are very evenly matched teams. I think it's 2 real teams playing each other. I think it's going to go under. That's why it's like a lower total. It should be a very competitive game. They're playing in the Desert Invitational, so that's in Scottsdale, Arizona. Here's another thing. Nebraska is a team that's been playing indoors, right? It's too cold for them to be outdoors. This is their real like outdoor action against a team in California. So I'm sure it never rains in California. Although I don't know, they might. I don't think Irvine had anything. My parents live close to there, and they said they didn't have to deal with the fire at all where they live. So I don't think Irvine really dealt with the wildfire. So I think this is not a distracted Irvine team in this scenario. And they're not playing that far away from. They're still in the same time zone. Nebraska is changing a time zone. And I think Irvine is probably more motivated to play a team like Nebraska that's ranked. They're ranked 24. The teams in the lower bottom half are teams more likely to lose. Kansas State was ranked in this scenario, and they lost to Cal last year.
All right. That's a few good picks for everybody. Got Kansas State under 14.5, Arkansas with the over, Georgia with the over, Mississippi State over, Kentucky under, Oregon State under, Wake Forest over, UC Irvine under. The ones we've got the ones we got the lines for, we got posted up here. But let's get into the conference. The conference last year, obviously, we've had it happen last year where the team ranked at the very bottom of these conferences end up winning these conferences. We saw it with the Illini last year. Is there a team that you're going to see it with this year?
I think you got to go back to that same conference and go with the 30-1 again, back-to-back, 30-1 hits in the Big Ten. I think the Maryland Terrapins are a 40 to 45 win team, most underrated team. It's absurd to me to think that you can just plug and play Oregon as the Big Ten champion. This is a team that's going to have to travel. They're going to have to go to places they've never gone before, and really, these are not warm weather scenario places for them either. I just don't think that Oregon is a plug-and-play Big Ten champion. I don't see any value in that. I love Maryland in this spot at 30-1. I think you're going to get another 30-1 hit in the Big Ten, just like you got with the Illini last year. This Maryland team is loaded, and they're in the second year of their coach. Nothing but upside to me. I think, actually, honestly, to me, a team like Oregon is better suited to make a run towards Omaha than they are to actually win the Big Ten. I think they're definitely a top 4 Big Ten team. They're going to get into the NCAA tournament. But are they going to win the Big Ten? I don't think so.
And they are the favorite to win, plus 105 on DraftKings right now, plus 105.
What value is that? Even money on Oregon? Like, look at all the other conferences, and the favorite is much better. It's like at least 3-1. Even money on Oregon to win the Big Ten is absurd. Are you really going to tell me that they're just going to show up and they're just hands and they're just that much better right away? I don't think so. That's like in Big 12, they said Utah football. I know I'm crossing the streams talking about this, but they installed Utah as the favorite to win the Big 12, and Utah was terrible, right, in football. I'm not saying that Oregon's going to be terrible like that, but
well, another last place winner. You got Arizona State, which obviously Maryland is not in last place. Ohio State is the biggest dog at plus 3,500, but essentially it's the same scenario. You got 35 and 28. Though.
I mean, if you want to look, I mean, Ohio State baseball took big hits. I don't think they're going to be very good. Like, I think they're going to be really bad.
Are you surprised to see Nebraska so high at plus 500, second place?
No, because they had a good year last year, and they're bringing about a good amount. But I just don't feel like they have the bats to be up there. They're going to struggle to score runs at times, and you might really see them struggle to score on the road. I mean, they're going to be in games because of their pitching, but being close might look good on a metric like RPI, but I don't think that's going to win you the league. Having good metrics like that, you have to win games. Like, not close losses are not going to count. I really just think Maryland is a loaded team, 40 to 45 win team, just primed to win and come out of nowhere. Like, just last season, the Illini were 30-1. It's like primed again. I think you got to do it again. $20 is going to pay you $600. Like, that's a pizza. You have to at least put a pizza on Maryland.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why
your screen's blank, but
I don't know why my screen's blank, but as long as I'm here, that works for me. Let's jump to the ACC. Okay. If we jump to the ACC, we're looking at Virginia is the favorite at plus 380. North Carolina plus 400, Florida State plus 650, Wake Forest 650, Clemson 700, Duke 800, North Carolina State 950, Virginia Tech 1600, Georgia Tech 1600, and Louisville is the biggest dog at plus 1800. Who wins the ACC?
You know, the ACC, this one is like a market that got influenced by people betting it. Virginia was not the opening favorite. I believe Florida State was. And it just seems to me that Virginia is so public all of a sudden on everything. to win it all, to win this, to win that. Oh, Virginia, Virginia, Virginia. I don't know what value there is left on Virginia, but I tell you, Virginia was not supposed to be the favorite to win the ACC. There might be better.
Now they're not
I don't really
huge
love this
favorite. I mean,
conference for more than like $10 or something, like on any of these hits. You can make a case for Georgia Tech. You can make a case for Virginia Tech as like these long shot plays. I don't love any of these plays in this conference. This is, I don't know. I don't feel it like I did like Maryland. I haven't taken any action, and I'm probably not. I don't really see the huge value here, like maybe $10 here or there. I mean, you could make a case here or there, a couple teams, but the favorite, too short. I guess it's just me now, so just keep talking and go through right out of the gate. So UConn and Stetson, man, Stetson is a team that I was hoping for more runs in this game because I questioned UConn putting everything together game one with an outfield that's really only bringing back one guy. I wonder how much they can hit. I wonder at times they look like they struggle on the road, and they look like they struggle to handle heat coming just from the road. This is, again, a team that's probably not been outside that much. Indoor facility, first time you're getting out there, Puerto Rico, something like a high of 80 degrees, going to be sunshine beating down on you. I'm not saying that this Hook C hasn't lived up to expectations. They were an NCAA tournament team last year. Probably be, and it's their favorite to win the Big East. This year, they're a dominating favorite. Back again. All right.
my bad. I don't know what just happened, but I got a fail safe, so we're just switching to the phone real quick. And give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna pull up these run lines for the DraftKings for what you call. Give me just a second here. And for the viewing audience, my apologies, man. It's the first episode. Give me just a minute here. We're gonna get all this sorted out. Don't you worry. God dang. Ugh. We got the amateur hour going on up here, man. What is really going on? What is really going on? Oh, come on, dude. Make it easy for me. It's not what I wanted. You son of a gun.
We're getting there. I mean, the first game of the day says 9 a.m. UConn Stetson. Stetson brings back like a ton of people. I think they're a really good team. The league they come from is very competitive. Being in Florida, they can attract talent that wants to stay in state that probably could play at a sexier, bigger name school, but they just choose to stay in Florida because, I mean, hey, what's not to love about Florida? UConn, like I said, struggled on the road at times. To me, really looked like they struggled with heat at times last season. I think these are two real teams playing. Here's the thing about Stetson. I don't know how many runs they can score in this scenario. I think these are two real teams playing each other, and I really like the total under 11.5 runs here.
All right, real quick. Yeah. So ACC conference champion.
I didn't love it. I don't really love
it. You don't love any of them.
I
But
mean,
if you had to,
maybe
if you
like
had to
10.
pick one based on what you know about these teams, which team do you feel comes away with the ACC?
I mean, I feel like the value is Florida State.
Florida
Florida
State at
State,
plus
Florida
650.
State was the paper favorite to begin with, and the public made Virginia, and then I think they pushed it. Who's in front of Florida State? Who's the other team?
North Carolina plus 400.
North
Florida State's
Carolina.
number 3.
North Carolina win the ACC. I don't think North Carolina is going to win the ACC. I don't think they got that kind of grit in them, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not saying they're not a good team. They're a very good team. They got a lot of talent, but it looks soft to me at times. The last season got pushed and then had like heroics to bail them out. I don't think they're going to win the ACC. Yeah, Florida State. I would think that was the one to me. Value, it's like 7-1 or something almost. Florida State. I mean, pizza, 20 to get 140. Hey, that's not bad. But don't really love it. I mean, I'm not taking any action. It's not in my portfolio. I don't feel like I felt Maryland.
So we've got the Big Ten, we've got the ACC. Let's go to your conference. We got the Big 12.
12. Yes, let's
The
talk about the 12.
The favorite in the Big 12 right now is going to be Oklahoma State at plus 250. You got TCU at plus 500. Arizona's at plus 550. Arizona State's plus 600. West Virginia's plus 750. Texas Tech plus 900. UCF plus 15. Kansas plus 18. Kansas State plus 20. Houston plus 25. Cincinnati 28. Utah 30. Baylor 35, and BYU rounds it out at 40-1.
I'll tell you, there's some disrespectful numbers in there, but it doesn't mean you should play them. You know, just because Cincinnati shouldn't be that long doesn't mean you should play it. Let's put it that way. Ones you should play, UCF, I think, value at
plus 15
to 1. West Virginia, I think, is a super talented team with something to prove. I think there's some value there. TCU losing their pitcher for the season like that was a big blow. I wonder if they're really going to even win at San Diego to open the season. At first, I really liked TCU, and then really slowed my roll. San Diego is a very good team, and they're going to have good starting pitching in all their games. And they have a decent enough bullpen, it seems, from afar. And they have the position players to score runs. They beat Texas at Texas in 1 of 3 games. I think they covered. But we have that historical. What was the historical from San Diego last year when they opened with Texas? Do you have that?
I don't. I can't. Not now.
Not now. Okay. I'm pretty sure it went under, and San Diego maybe covered. I'm not exactly sure. I'd have to look again. But they were competitive. They at least won 1 out of the 3 at Texas. And this is a home game for them. I don't think they get a lot of teams of TCU's caliber to come play at San Diego. Because there's not a lot in it for teams, you know? Because if you're going to go lose there, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. So it's not a great spot for TCU here to open the season. And I wonder, plus 500 doesn't seem good enough. But I tell you, all these people are really talking up Kansas. I think that's absurd. Kansas was an 8-9 road team. I mean, you're like sub 500 on the road. I think that it's never going to be a gimme road win when you're the University of Kansas. And there was some reasons for that. I mean, their home turf, the way it played was different than how it played on the road. That might have a factor in that. And they've redone their turf, and they claim that it's more level with the rest of the surfaces that they'll be playing on. I don't know if that's really valid or not. We'll see. This is a developmental program, right? They've got pitchers in, but they lost so many position players. I question how Kansas is going to score runs here. So for them to be 18, listen, I think that's actually like not like they should be much higher. They're not going to win the Big 12. They're not going to be better than a 500 team. People are talking them up. They're going to top 6 finish. They play a Charmin non-con schedule. They don't play any real teams. The only Power 4 team they play is Minnesota. Minnesota is like a bottom half team. You're not going to have a non-conference schedule that's going to get you an at-large bid. They just didn't rise to the occasion. I don't know how playing these little teams is going to get you ready to win Big 12 Road Series.
So for the ones that we like, the ones that you like, for the value, we got West Virginia at plus 750.
Absolutely,
And then
West Virginia could be a bomb squad. You don't really know how good these guys could be. They could be very good. They could be very, very good.
And then UCF at plus 1500.
Mega value, probably the best pitching rotation in the league. So, I mean, if you're going to bet on pitching in a game like baseball, hey, these guys got the best pitching. Position players questionable, but they got a lot of talent coming in. You don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. If some
Is
of these
there
guys
one
turn
that you
out, they could be really good.
Outside of them, is there one that you think really is probably the most dominant and takes over the conference out of the top? Because you got Oklahoma State 250, TCU 500, Arizona
I
550.
mean, Oklahoma
Arizona
State's like one of
600.
those public type of fields. Like, right on paper, these guys should have everything. They got all of these. There should be big time, but they always find a way to, like, I don't know. They almost have like a home field disadvantage. It's very strange with Oklahoma State. I just they have these mental lapses and they haven't been able to get over the hump like these last couple of years. And now they're going to win the Big 12. I mean, on paper, yes, they should, but are they actually going to? I don't know. I question it. I don't really see the value in it.
So,
honestly, I think West Virginia is like really. If you're going to be like, hey, here's 100, let me pick one, I would pick West Virginia. But
West
like,
Virginia,
from a gambling, like, hey, 15-1 on the best starting rotation, UCF.
UCF. All right.
But I mean, for my money, like, I want to actually win West Virginia.
Bet. All right. So we got West Virginia, we got UCF. If you want to take a shot.
Yeah.
And finally, we got the SEC. Probably got to be one of the most competitive conferences in this whole thing, right? I mean, you've got some of the best teams in this division. You got Tennessee at plus 400, Texas A&M at plus 450, LSU at plus 450, Arkansas plus 650, Florida 10-1, Georgia 13, Texas 13, Kentucky 13, Vanderbilt at 18, Alabama at 20, South Carolina at 20, Mississippi State at 20, Oklahoma at 22, Auburn at 25, Ole Miss at 28, and Missouri rounding it out at 40-1.
You know what's wild is Missouri is really not a bad team. They're favored. They're favored over a team that's like is supposed to be like one of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten in Penn State. If that tells you anything about the SEC, that their worst team is favored over a top 4 team in another conference. And you know what's wild? I kind of feel like Missouri's going to win that game. We'll see. But man, the SEC, man, I don't think that Tennessee's going to do it again. It's one thing to go out there and be the hunter, and now you're the hunted. You're the reigning national champion. You got the natty at Rocky Top. And A&M is supposed to be the best team, though, in the nation, right?
I mean, they're right next.
That's
to
what
each
everyone
other.
says. Hey, that's the number one team. A&M is the team to beat. They got all the talent. A&M.
It's basically Tennessee, A&M, and LSU because Tennessee's plus 4, A&M's plus 450, LSU's plus 450.
I tell you who, in my opinion, is washed is Vanderbilt. I wouldn't touch Vanderbilt. I think this is like the end. Tim Corbin might be moving on. Cash out his chips. Vanderbilt rebuild project on their stadium, never ending. It seems like.
I mean, they're
Vanderbilt's not a team I would touch. I think Vanderbilt's washed. Wouldn't touch Vanderbilt. Georgia, to me, it's like another one of these teams getting talked up. No, I wouldn't touch Georgia.
Texas take that next step with that new coach.
Man, honestly, like I feel like Texas is one of these teams that could, on paper, you could make like a Dallas Cowboys like case, Jerry Jones style case right here. Their coach is an experienced SEC coach. He knows what he's going to get on the other side, right? They don't know what they're going to get from Texas. This is the first time they've seen Texas, right? And this is a Texas team that's supposed to be way more focused. They lost to teams last year that is like really super embarrassing. It's like unreal that they lost to them, in my opinion. and that's why the coach is not there. They just didn't have the focus. Like they just was like going through the motions. For the amount of talent they had, they just absolutely didn't show up in big games. That's for sure. And they took games off against these smaller teams too and lost, like really embarrassing losses. Like I think they lost to Rio Grande Valley for the first time in like 100 years or something. And when you do something,
we ain't got to bring up old shit now. Relax.
I'm just saying, but just as an example, they're not going to lose to that. There's zero chance that the Vaqueros or whatever their mascot is, I think it's Vaqueros, they're not going to lose. Texas is not going to lose to a team like that. They open with Louisville, and that's going to be a big game for both teams. And I think it might be a bigger game to Louisville, because Louisville could leave where they're at 0-3. This I think is sadly Louisville's best shot for a win all weekend. They're putting out like their ace best pitcher against Texas here. Texas I think is only minus 140, 150. Mm-hmm. It's not like a huge
spread.
Not a huge dominating favorite, because the talent. I tell you, Louisville has a very good outfield. They're going to be able to put up runs here. But I think Texas is going to be a different Texas team. They're going to be a hard-nosed team, and they're going to get runs on the board when they need to get runs on the board. They're going to take on the identity of the coach. Let me tell you, their coach knows arguably maybe the best coach in the game. Maybe. I mean, that's why he's at Texas, right? I mean, if you've seen, he's made the postseason at every stop, like UNLV. He's made multiple coaching, and he's always made the NCAA tournament. I mean, this guy is like the coach. That's why he's at Texas. This is the job. And the value is there. What, 13-1 for Texas to win the S1? You know, you can make the case, man. You can make the case.
So in the SEC, we're hinting at Texas at plus 1,300. But who do we like? Who do we like to win that conference?
I mean, it's hard to not say it's not going to be A&M.
A&M?
I think A&M is the most. I mean, everyone's going to tell you they're the most talented team, right? I don't think it's going to be Tennessee. Let's put it that way. I don't think it's
no shot for LSU then.
Prove it. I don't think so.
A&M it is. A&M at plus 450, and we're sprinkling a little something on Texas just to see if they can pull one over on them.
A&M's the best team. I think Texas has the most upside. That's my opinion. I think that's valid.
All right, man. So we come to the end. We've got our final thoughts. What do you think, man?
I think this is going to be a great season. We're going to wake up tomorrow in 12 hours, less than 12 hours, and we're going to have college baseball all day. And we're going to see some early impressions. Like I said, I don't think I wouldn't chase any upsets tomorrow. I wouldn't be chasing a lot of big dogs to win outright. I just don't think it's going to happen. That's not historically what's happened. And if you're going to go over, I would find teams that are really just going to get beat up all the way down. Their starter's going to get beat up. Their bullpen's going to get beat up. But similarly, they're also going to come out and not want to get embarrassed. So a David versus Goliath scenario where Goliath can actually score some runs, or just straight up Goliath is just going to smoke them like 26-0 style. So keep in mind that there is a mercy run rule in college baseball, and your bets can be voided on favorites and totals like this. You know, it's like one of those things, especially to the novice bettor. So keep that in mind when you're making these plays, and research and know where this rule is in play and where it's not. In a lot of these opening season tournaments, it's not going to be in play. But David versus Goliath scenarios, for some of these home teams that are hosting teams, it is going to be in play. So keep that in mind when you're playing totals, when you're playing these run lines, when you're playing these favorites. Run lines, man, got to play these dogs, man. Don't be afraid to take these run lines. Pocket these points. And don't be afraid to go under the total when you think it's an even matchup, right? And don't be afraid to go over when you think that this team's going to get smoked, because they're probably going to get smoked. And that's the Paleo Pacers way.
All right, man. So we got our predictions at the bottom. A few of the games that we got picked out here by your man Sweets. So you can take those to the bank for you. Um, we'll keep you posted as it comes in. But man, we 12 hours away from opening day. It's one of the best times of the year. It's one of the best. It's America's game.
So this is basically like a second March Madness. I mean, we got a 64 team tournament. We've got a similar bracket style format when you go through, all your teams. It's just baseball. Baseball's catching up. They didn't used to line anything. So like these last couple of years of getting the lines and getting early lines from DK, conference winners, all this stuff, this is all new. So it's like, in a way, it's like our time to get in here. And really, our knowledge base to some degree is better than these historical numbers that they're running on these algorithms and these players. Like, baseball is a very skill-based game, and people can come up and just as quickly fall off. It's a super high variance thing, especially in we're talking about college baseball with the aluminum bat. Like, you're going to see all sorts of crazy stuff happen, and that's what makes it great. You're just never going to ever really know, right? No matter how much you think you know, you're not going to know, and that's what makes this great. Because it's the odds maker really believes that they know the NFL, and they do to some degree. I mean, they have access to all sorts of stuff, but when you're talking about this many college teams, they don't account for weather a lot of the times, and they just let things, when it's like super windy and super cold out there, and if the wind is blowing in, I mean, balls are just going to pop flies. They're not going to get out of the park a lot, I've noticed. In places like Kansas and stuff, you're going to get these super cold, windy days. You got to hit those totals. You got to attack those unders. You got to be on top of it. The book is not going to be on top of it. You definitely have edges. They're going to be there. And I would say make winning plays. Don't come out gambling. Don't chase the money lines. Day one is not a good day to do that. Can't stress it enough.
Well, boys, that's your Paleo picks. Appreciate y'all coming out. Sweets, always a pleasure. Guys, we'll see y'all next week.